Siyar, let's roll back the years. What was life like for you growing up in Afghanistan, in your childhood, your teen years?
I remember the first couple of years in Kabul, which was really beautiful. I think that was the time before the 1979 wars and things like that. So I I was born in a more peaceful environment, to be honest. And first 5 years of my life was lovely, where my father he used to work as a higher official at the government back then. Uh, and then the war when it started, kind of internal wars, especially the Kabul situation got worse. So we had to kind of move from Kabul, the center, to the north of Afghanistan, where it was a smaller town called Shimirghan, and then we lived there for some time, and then from there again we had to move to another city uh, called Mazar Sharif, which is one of the main cities in Afghanistan, in north of Afghanistan. So, yeah, but again, my father used to work for the government. But to be very honest, back then, my knowledge and I was a little boy, so I didn't have a lot of idea what's going on around. I didn't ask a lot of questions. So wherever my family moved, we moved. Uh, and one very wonderful thing about my parents, the thing is that the wonderful point was that they always had this very smart way of keeping things very simple and show it normal to the kids, especially for myself and for my elder brother, who's 4 years elder than me. So they used to keep it in a way that we didn't panic. And that was the thing, that I never asked that what's going on around the country and things. So I knew that it was a war. It was not a good situation. They knew, but I didn't know. So that started like that, so far that I remember. And then the first round where the Taliban started kind of capturing north of Afghanistan in around 1996, I would say. Around that time, I was the age of 5, 6, so around that time. Then we had to decide and move to escape to Pakistan. So the first few rounds of war in north of Afghanistan, I was there. We saw some horrible war, and in fact, at one point, a number of a kind of some streets and houses, including ours, kind of fall right in the middle of the war lines, where you could literally see rockets flying over your house. So I remember those horrible. I have those horrible memories from the childhood. That's something that is there, but still, not knowing the context, what's going on, all you know is that a war is going on, but who with who's fighting whom, that was something that was very kind of unclear to me back then.
Afghanistan has a very sad history in recent times of being invaded by the Soviet Union, and then most recently the war between the Taliban and the West. Can you describe what your initial impressions were back in the early days when NATO forces landed in Afghanistan?
Uh, so this is around again 2001, the time that if I kind of express my feelings back then. I remember coming back from Pakistan. I remember the situation, especially the place where all Afghans, all tired Afghans, wanted to come back to Afghanistan from Pakistan. It was very crowded and things, and the feelings was that now Afghanistan is liberated. Afghanistan is kind of out of danger of the Taliban. The Taliban government, the horrible government of Taliban has fallen down. So now NATO forces, these are friends. They have come to to the country. That was the feeling. We started with really, really good feeling, and then most people working for the government or joining the NATO forces, really, a lot of Afghans started this collaboration with NATO forces with the mentality of democracy, a better life, a better Afghanistan. So that was a good feeling, to be honest. It is like not that rude, very radical, radical kind of government that the Taliban had, and still they have now. So that was the beginning, if I could answer that question. So yes, at the beginning we started with that feeling that now Afghanistan is going towards a better life, better Afghanistan, which for 20 years actually it did to a great extent. But unfortunately, the last circumstances has changed now. Yeah.
At what point during the occupation did it become apparent that the West were kind of failing in their mission?
In 2019 and 20 especially, this got really worse. That was the time where a lot of mistakes happened by both sides, I would say, by both the international community and then Afghan government as well. So resulted into 15th of August 2021. So yeah, that was the answer.
In the summer of 2021, the whole world saw the awful videos of the collapse of Kabul, specifically at the airfield. Could you describe what the evacuation program was actually like?
Yeah, that is for me that I have recently, though I have come out of the nightmares of that after 2 years. So the fall of Kabul, apparently it started from the 1st of August, I would say, but escalated and become more severe, especially after 10th and 11th of August. I remember this, and I can say this, I can vouch for this. Why? Because the place where I lived in Kabul is where it's called Third Makrurian, where I used to live. And then the US Embassy, it was just a 10-15 minutes walking distance. So I could see, and around 12th or 11th, 12th, especially 12th of August, around those days and nights, I could see that, well, a lot of things is happening in the US Embassy. I mean, not that you have to go inside and see, but I could see from outside that a lot of things happening. You could literally smell and see and the burning of documents, like smoke coming out of the UK Embassy, US Embassy. So you could see this. And then you could do analysis that, well, something is going on there, right? The second thing, huge number of people kind of moving in and out of US Embassy through helicopters. Now, interesting part was that the US Embassy and Kabul airport has only if you drive, it's just a 5 minutes driving distance, right? Even by walking, it's a 10-20 minutes walking distance. But helicopters were flying over back and forth. So this movements kind of initiated a kind of, how would I say it, a worry, a scaring situation for people looking at this, that something very horrible is going on. Plus, when the Bagram airfield, suddenly the US forces, they shut down the Bagram airfield one overnight, all the lights are down, and in the news you can see that, well, what happened? The US Army left Bagram airfield, the most strategic airfield that you shouldn't leave, actually. So that was a situation where the Kabul was already surrounded by the Taliban. North has already most of northern provinces had fallen. So I would say that 90 95% of Afghanistan was fallen under the in the hands of the Taliban. Anyways, but in Kabul, still the government was up and running, but the main panic started like actually in 11th and 12th of August. When this escalated, when this increased to a great extent, on 15th of August, so it was a normal day. I just dressed up, had my breakfast, went to my office. And my office and my residence was kind of close. It was like a 10 minutes walking distance. So I just walked to my office. But it was not a normal day. Everyone was in the phase of a panic situation. And suddenly, around kind of 11 o'clock, around 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the morning. So because I was the director of IT for General Directorate of Protection and Security, so two of my managers, they came in and we were actually talking about what should be the next steps. We knew that Kabul is going to fall. We knew that, well, it's going to collapse, but what should be the kind of next steps? Like when it falls, how are we going from IT perspective? How are we going to kind of purge or delete our data, making sure that it doesn't fall in the wrong hands and things like that? You know, the recovery plan. Not recovery plan, I would say that the destruction plan. So that was the talks which were going on. And at that moment, another director who used to be our finance director, he just walked into my room and said that the Taliban have entered the Kabul. They're coming, and we were like, yes, we know that they're coming, but we didn't know that it's going to happen like this without even a single fire or anything. They just, as if everything was a plan, as if everything was kind of, it was an open invitation, things like that. So we didn't know that. But anyways, I kind of asked my managers, two managers that they reported back to me. I told them, okay, so we were thinking that this destruction plan is going to take, like, at least we were expecting that next 2 weeks probably Kabul will fall. But now that it has happened, let's start this. So the destruction plan started, where we had to destroy as much data as we could, to be honest. So yeah, which went successfully. I'm happy that at least, well, yeah, so it went successfully. Anyways, but the main important part was that Kabul kind of locked down from it was panic. Now, the system collapses. The president flew out of the country. When the president flew, the highest command is not there. Ministry of Defense, everyone left their jobs and things. A chaos began. A chaos where everyone started running towards something that they don't know. And then on 15th of August, that night, suddenly the news spread in Kabul. Kabul is not a very big city, right? It's not a big city. And suddenly the news spread that, well, the Americans are kind of, their military planes kind of take anyone who goes there, right? And that happened. They kind of put some people in the flight where they have no relevance with any whatsoever with the NATO forces. They kind of started the evacuation. That created a massive chaos, a kind of chaos that, well, I had never seen like that. Now, Kabul airport is a small place. Kabul is a small place itself, but then Kabul airport is also not that big. So it really got kind of that the people from all sides started coming, and it was a crowd of like hundreds of thousands of people. And then on 24th of August, my friend finally he gave me a green light, said that, well, your name is on the manifest list now. Please go to the airport and go to the site where the British gate was there. So airport by this time, like in 10 days of this evacuation program, came to a situation where the different countries had to kind of divide and take a part of the airport to manage their evacuation, evacuees or people, to get their people out of Afghanistan, like Norway, like UK, US. So they had to kind of manage that way. So eventually, I went to the airport with my family, my wife and my son. We arrived at the airport around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we had to kind of stay there in the crowd, in a horrible thing on the other side of, as I said, on the other side of the wall for about 12 to 13 hours. And then on 25th, and 25th that happened. That was not 24th, 25th happened. And then on 26th of August, we were able to kind of at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, after waiting another 12 hours, we got on the C-17s, the airport aircrafts, and then flew to Emirates, to UAE, and from there, after having 4 hours of gap, we flew back through commercial flights to Birmingham. So it was a complete and a cycle, I would say, 3 days and nights in total, sleepless, foodless, little drink and things like that. So we were taken to a bridging to Radisson Blue in Stansted, London, for quarantine. It was quarantine time, so like about 25 days we were in quarantine. From there, then we moved to Southampton in a bridging hotel, and that was for 2.5 months. We were there, and then from there we were allocated a flat in Basingstoke where we live now. So, long journey.
Can you describe specifically how it felt when you were queuing up for the airport? There was this very bizarre situation where the Taliban and Western forces were collaborating to manage the crowds, and in terms of who could be let into the actual airport itself. As you said, you were in potential danger because of your collaboration with the Afghanistan government. Can you describe how it felt seeing the Taliban up close?
Well, now that is really a good question, to be honest. I mean, the feeling is a lot of things. First is facing the people that you always considered enemy, right? Today, they are in power to kind of allow you or disallow you to kind of go or not go anywhere, right? It is humiliating in your own homeland, own country, right? The second part is that in the gap of 3 to 4 hours from being somebody very important, you're nobody, right? That is a very, very horrible feeling. It is, yes, you said to describe it, but I don't think I'm able to describe it, right? Because really, I mean, imagine losing all your identities at once, everything, that you're nobody anymore. And if you say that I was somebody, you're dead because you were somebody. So you have to accept it. Now I have to go as nobody to do something. So that is why I'm saying this. For example, in the West, sometimes when we hear things that, oh, you offended me. Why? Because you were not supposed to tell me he or she. My pronouns are they and things like that. Please don't get me wrong. No, I don't offend. I don't mean to be offensive, or maybe don't mean to kind of disrespect the gender identity and things like that. But I'm just trying to express what it feels, right? For example, when people get very annoyed when you do not respect their identities, imagine when you don't have any identity suddenly, and a person and someone who is how would I put it, who even doesn't know how to dress, who even doesn't know how to eat their food, and doesn't live like a normal human being, they take power and now they are the boss, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is about, the second part is about the belief, right? Like suddenly, like overnight, or maybe in 3 4 hours, this whole belief that you made in your mind, that why you're fighting for, what are you fighting for, and everything suddenly collapses. It's like poof, it doesn't exist anymore, right? It is something very very difficult to describe, to be honest, right? Because what happens what happens with that, to be honest, is that you start kind of doubting everything, and everything starts losing its meaning to you, right? Like, okay, for example, I tell you, when I came to the UK, for about 12 months, I would say 1 year, whole year, I had nightmare about, and the nightmare that I had, it was a dream that kept on repeating and repeating again over and over, and that was that I'm stuck in Kabul. I cannot get out of Kabul, right? And then there was another problem, very serious one, is that suddenly you come from maybe a low living standard to a highest living standard, and then you're expected to learn and do everything the way that others are doing, right? Uh, this kind of badly results in a lot of things, right? For people to kind of it takes a lot of time to come back to your senses, try to understand, try to find meanings and value to things, right? Otherwise, then coming back to this main question is that how does it feel? Well, it feels very different. I mean, I don't know if I could express it or if I will be able to express it, but in short, it is, I would say that it is very, very difficult.
After $2 trillion spent, 20 years occupying Afghanistan, the West initially entered the country to fight Al-Qaeda after 9/11, and it turned out to be a nation-building activity of trying to install a democratic government onto Afghanistan. How do you look back at that time?
Well, I don't know. This really is a difficult question for me to answer, honestly. But I would really, really see this, and the question would be that, okay, uh, is this going to be the future as like all the time? Anyways, so it's like, yes, you're right. That amount of money. More than money, the most important thing for me would be around all these lives lost in a battle that eventually kind of resulted into nothing, right? Into replacing Taliban with the Taliban, right? Especially um, in the very last months of my duty with the Afghan government, I kind of witnessed situations where the Taliban were in more power. They could do any kind of operation they wanted, right? So I saw um, situations where people died. Either it was because of IEDs because of like car bombing and things like that. And then all these handsome, beautiful people, like young people, they die, right? Just thinking that I'm working or I'm doing something for my country and for my future. More than that, I'm doing something for the values such as democracy, human rights, and things like that, right? And eventually, all of them are gone, right? So how do I feel? I, in a nutshell, still I'm afraid, right? I'm afraid because if what the fear is more around kind of um, the situation that's going on around the world, not only about Afghanistan but everywhere around the world, right? So this kind of craving and intentionally kind of creating problems for, I don't know, by world leaders or by countries, and then causing all these immigrations, causing all these mass amount of trouble in different countries. I don't know. It is scary, to be honest.
Do you think the West should ever again engage in trying to impose a democracy on a country?
If this imposing it by me, if that's going to be the same like what happened in Afghanistan, I think no. Right? I think no. I mean, it was not the right way to do that, right? But then you would say that okay, if the West would kind of do something like that, is that this time the West should lean on the lessons learned and do it the right way, right? And the right way would be is kind of accept that, well, democracy is a very difficult thing for everyone to comprehend. Just do it the way that people are happy to do it, right? For example, what happened now after that 20 years of imposing democracy in a country like Afghanistan, the current Taliban are more worse than what they used to be, right? They are more radical, they are more difficult to explain in words, but you see what's going on, right? Before, what the Taliban used to do is that they were kind of, they didn't know the deceptions and things like that, right? But today they know, they do the horrible things, they hide it, right? They know how to hide it. They know how to kind of, well, anyways, but yes, in a short, I would say that, well, democracy is a lovely and beautiful notion, but the way that it happened in Afghanistan in the last 20 years, no, that was not the right way to do.
Today's the 17th of February 2024. The Afghanistan National Reserve has been frozen ever since the Taliban took over in Kabul. What future do you see for Afghanistan?
If it goes the way that it's going right now, I see, of course, for Afghan nation, for Afghan people, I see no bright future. But that is not only for Afghan people, but for that region, actually, I see a very dark future, right? Because, well, illiteracy and a kind of a ground for terrorism creates horrible people, and they spread like virus in regions. So poverty, illiteracy, and things like that, they are horrible things that they shouldn't exist, actually. But if it keeps on going for Afghanistan, I see, well, of course, there will be a future, but a dark one, a dangerous one, like the one that some people think it's not going to be like, okay, it's just going to be contained and things. No, it's going to be a horrible one. It's going to affect a lot of people, a lot of countries, a lot of, different aspects. So it's not a good future.
Do you think you'll ever return to your home country?
Depends. I mean, now you see, one of the other aspects of it is that, well, you're stuck into kind of situations like that. My daughter was born in the UK. She's British. But I was born in Afghanistan. I'm Afghan. That's my homeland, right? And one more important thing that I should definitely kind of emphasize on this is that, yes, immigrants, there are different types of immigrants. Some, they left their countries due to different reasons. Every immigrant has their own stories to tell. But for us and people like myself, who we used to work shoulder to shoulder with the NATO forces and things like that, the reason we left Afghanistan was not because of a desire, intention, or just we wanted to come to the UK. Because if that was the matter, I traveled through the government kind of opportunities to the US. I traveled to the UK. I went to Germany and places like this. So like many other people, if I had bad intentions, I could stay in the UK and don't go back in 2020, right? Or I would have kind of take a route to Canada or somewhere from the US in 2018 and don't go back to Afghanistan, if that was my intention. No, like a lot of Afghans, we didn't do this. Our intention was to go back to Afghanistan, do something for the country, and get it out of the situation. But now, with all this that happened, now we are where everyone is everywhere, like broken wings, right? Broken hearts. So going back to Afghanistan, definitely that's my homeland. That's where I was born. That's where I kind of spent my childhood and things that really matters and makes us human, right? But on the other hand, it's also very difficult and heartbreaking that when you go where you call it homeland, for some reason, because of the very people that they consider themselves Afghans, but we don't know what kind of Afghans are they, because of a government that you don't recognize, you don't accept, a religion that you don't recognize, you don't accept, right? By religion, I don't mean the Islam, I mean the Taliban religion. This is not what we were born. That's not how Islam functions. That's not how Islam works. So going back to Afghanistan will depend, right? If a chance is there to kind of go back to Afghanistan, but this time in a much better agreement, right? We will not have any problem kind of stand shoulder to shoulder with the Taliban if those they kind of put their weapons on the floor and think about becoming and fixing the country. We'll be more than happy to do that, because eventually that's the idea. But if it's going to be about imposing another democracy that will continue for another 20 years, eating half of our lives, and then after 20 years it's going to be the same story, to be very honest, I don't think it's worth it. It's worth it. I mean, rather than that, I would focus to kind of continue building a better society in the UK, the way that I have started, like having a small community in Basingstoke and things like that. If that is, then you would think that, well, it would be more worth it to kind of live a future which is more visible, more better, right? Because the main thing here is about not the place. The main thing is about lives, and the most important part is that how those lives are going to live, right? So for Afghanistan, we always try to work for a quality life. But unfortunately, calculating all these things, it didn't happen. But at least in the UK, you could say that at least I can live for my family. I can do something for my family. And through that, or perhaps maybe we can collectively, like other communities, friends that we lived in Afghanistan, we can kind of come together, do something for our own people, and that will definitely have a huge impact and effect for the UK and in the society as well. For example, we work, we pay taxes, we make communities, we increase businesses and things like that. So if it makes sense, yeah, that's my view now. Depends.
In 2024, we still live in a very polarized society that really stems from Brexit. How would you describe your reception since you've been in the UK?
Well, comparing it to 2019, yes, of course. I mean, it's a huge difference because in 2019, when we were here with through the Afghan government, and then we had a chance to kind of travel to Europe and things. But of course, after Brexit, things have changed. But yeah, well, to be honest, for me, it wasn't a huge shock. Of course, because I had a first time coming to UK in a peaceful way. Well, when I came in 2021, UK really kind of received us well. That the way that it was promised is that, well, warm welcome. Yes, sometimes it happens. Sometimes, I wouldn't say all the time. Sometimes, in some places, it happens that I'll have to kind of give a little bit of explanation to some people about the difference of some immigrants, the way they came or the way that we came into the UK. But I respect the decisions. I respect their views, kind of things, and most of the time it's really a warm welcome. People come, oh, okay, so you have come through the evacuation program and things like that. But well, yeah, that is. I hope I could answer that question, but that's what I think.
Siyar, you've had a pretty exceptional life in terms of your experiences in the last 2 decades. As a final question, what would you say you've learned about human nature, for good, for bad, for ugly?
For good, for bad, for ugly. Well, yes, of course it is. It is. I think we humans, we always, doesn't matter whatsoever, whatever happens, we move towards our interests, starting from individuals, from habits, looking for interest, and collectively that makes the national interests. But unfortunately, what I've also seen is that when we human beings kind of come to a situation that we lose the path to our self-interest and work for some other's interest without knowing that we are working for other interests, that is something that I have really experienced, like in many places. You see, for example, unfortunately, one of the things that sometimes I wish it didn't happen, that the current people, like those people that they call themselves, for example, in Afghanistan, that we are the children of this country. We are working for Afghanistan, the Taliban, and all these terrorists. Unfortunately, they're working for someone else's interest. That's the worst, I would say. And then the bad thing is that, well, you see people who have their interest, you trust their interests, right? Without knowing that, well, their intentions, interests are not the way that it looks like. This is a regret, personally, I have working for some people back in Afghanistan, trusting their intentions. But on the other side is that the good side of human nature is that we are flexible, learn from lessons, right? So you are adaptable to environments. You immediately pick that, okay, now that things have changed, right? Now let's enjoy the best moments that's happening, right? For example, this is yes, a life that started for me, for my family in the UK. It took some time to adapt, and still we're trying to kind of understand what's going on around us and things like that. But eventually, the beautiful side is that, well, in good environments, you become more better, looking at better people around you. So yes, I have seen, again, reiterating on that. Unfortunately, I've seen the worst people. I've seen the worst people kind of very cruel, very dishonest, very illiterate, and the worst nature that you could see. And that those kind of people destroy themselves, destroy you, and destroy their society around them. But at the same time, I have really had the opportunity of seeing wonderful, great people with dignity, who really stood for the bond and that covenant that they had with, not only with others around them, but with themselves. So yes, it's evil and angel. So because I have seen both sides, in a nutshell, all I can say is that, well, living on the angel side is much better than the devil side, really.
Siyar, you've lived through experiences which very few people on this planet can comprehend. And it's really testament to your character and your resilience. Yeah. So personally, I want to say a big thank you for sharing your story. It's really powerful.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for listening.